inside my head. I try to turn it down, but I can't quite drown it out. I'm tortured every
Welcome.
day.
Thank you for joining us today. You're listening to Society Bites Radio, and I'm your host, Dr. Richard Himmer.
And I'm Sherry Himmer, and this is Authentically You, social interaction for the mind and soul.
For the next 25 minutes, we talk about healing and growth from the inside out. Remember, you are 100% responsible for your happiness, joy, and well-being.
So last segment, we started with Buck, and we are taking Buck as an example that we use in our course for the one-day solution to toxic relationships in the workplace. And we're unzipping Buck's story. And we developed his situation last time where he got promoted. He's not one of the other guys or gals in the office anymore.
But he was promoted for the wrong reasons.
He was promoted because he's a good engineer. And now he's got these three challenges, which is that he's wielding a heavy hand because that's what he believes he needs to do now to get results. He also thinks that he knows better now that because he has a new title, but he's also lost his connections with his workmates. And that's creating a deficit for him. And that's where we've left Buck. And this is giving us an empathetic view into what's called the accidental bully, how a culture takes a normal person and turns them into a bully.
So I want to take a section out of my dissertation and talk about the profile of a bully. The stereotype of a bully is that of a tough and dynamic manager who gets the job done. This type of thinking is changing as the consequences of bullying emerge. And what that means is there is more and more research. It actually started out of Scandinavia, went into Great Britain. We are the last ones, meaning the United States of America are the last ones to address workplace bullying by research. We're also, it's not against the law to be
a bully.
It's
allowed.
Yeah.
It's legal to be a bully.
It's legal to be a bully, although we're now finding that there's a huge cost. In one of the papers that I wrote, I actually itemized the cost of bully behavior in an organization. If CFOs actually took the time to research the cost of having a toxic personality in their organization, they'd fire everyone on the spot. It would be cheaper and more productive to fire them wholesale and bring in all new people starting from scratch because the cost is so monumental. There's a difference between being tough and demanding and being a bully. Bullies, let me explain why. Remember the paradoxes we talked about, tough versus love? It's okay to be tough. Your dad was beautiful at being tough, but he knew when to show the connectivity, the emotions for the most part, at least for you.
For the most part. And it wasn't
I'm just using it for you, right?
Yeah.
But in cases like this, it's okay to be a hard nose. But if the hard nose does it without empathy, sarcastically, critically, judgmentally,
or openness,
then there's no good. It's just only a singular skill set and not balanced by the paradoxical skill set of the other side. Bullies bully to hide inadequacies and incompetencies. I want to say that again.
Yeah.
Because if you are dealing with a bully, you need to know they're bullying out of fear.
And that's where I was talking about. Here's Buck's new position. He was fine before, but now there's this huge pressure on him, and he's feeling that sense of inadequacy.
Right. And they're jerks because they're not connecting, and they're collusionary. They're getting exactly what they don't want, but they don't know how to do it differently.
And here's the danger. Someone like Buck comes into this position, and he starts to use a different skill set for the sake of productivity and efficiency and effectiveness, and it's not effective, but he thinks it is. And so then it can become routine, habituated, and even an addiction.
Right.
But
it's not so much a skill set at first.
Pressure.
It's a tactic.
Yeah.
It becomes a skill set, but skill set meaning that they're good at doing something bad.
Yeah, skill set I don't mean as in that's good. It's just
I just wanted to clarify that.
It's a way to solve the situation.
That's that upper level thinking that we were talking about earlier, right?
The decoupling.
That was a high decoupling moment.
Yes, it was.
We will cover this at some point in time.
We're going to break apart our own communication.
Yeah, we've got
idiosyncrasies, which we call high decoupling and low decoupling, or contextualism. But
right, we'll get into that. Sorry to sidetrack here, but we were going to do a show on this one, but
we will do a show on this.
There's so much to it. We want to be able to make sense of it when we do it. Okay, so basically, bullies are in practice closet cowards. They are highly envious, jealous, and insecure. They have low team spirit or team skills, and they use their behaviors to compensate for lack of technical and or social skills. I cannot emphasize this enough. If you think you're a hard nose and that you're cool because you're a hard nose and management likes you, just look in the mirror and realize you're a coward, you're afraid of your own shadow, you're incompetent in your social skills, and you're not connecting. So you have to be a hard nose so you can medicate. When they give you resistance back, you can say, see, this is the kind of people they really are, without understanding that you initiated this. So you're playing the role of a victim, but what you really did is you started out as a persecutor so you could play the role of a victim and then medicate. You're a drug addict, for crying out loud, when you're acting this way. And if you don't know that, you're unconsciously incompetent. The goal is to get at least to the consciously incompetent and go, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. Because the numbers don't support it. They do temporarily. You can threaten people and get an immediate reaction. But the reality is it doesn't sustain you long term.
For decades, it was believed that bullies at school were the self-confident, charismatic kids. Assuming you were a target of a bully in grade school, if asked, how would you qualify your bully? Is the bully bigger than you?
Yes.
Stronger than you?
Yes.
Have more friends than you?
Yes.
Better looking or more talented than you?
Sometimes.
The probability is that yes is your answer to each question paints the bully in a very jaded light. These same kids grow up to be adult bullies, and the reality is that they couldn't create healthy relationships as a kid, and nothing changed with the reality is that they couldn't, with the advent of the, let me go back. These same kids grow up to be adult bullies, and the reality is that they couldn't create healthy relationships as a kid, and nothing changed with the advent of adulthood.
And that's important to understand, because of the way, what happened to them as a child.
That's where they're put into a situation that they habituate.
And the other thing here that I don't bring out is that adults, when people become adults as bullies, reverse that, bullies as adults, they could have been bullied as a kid.
Yeah.
It's one of the two. So what happens is their family of origin put them in a position of being a target. They rebelled against being a target, and they moved on to be a bully. Or their family of origin introduced the culture of being a bully, and they just perpetuated it all through into adulthood.
What you experienced as a kid was a positional difference of power. The bigger kids have more power. The ones with friends have more power. The older kids have more power. Looks are often associated with popularity, friends, and influence, and therefore power.
If, there's nothing you can do about being big and strong, or being good looking or perceived good looking, or being small and scrawny and weak or a nerd.
Beautiful people versus the rest of us.
Yeah. So that, that's hereditary. And what I'm always intrigued with is people who are naturally given, what's considered a good looking body or a good looking face. Somehow that's all they know themselves as. Their identity is associated with their visual looks. I've got a client right now, or I know of someone who, young girl, looks older than she is, but all she knows the world as is that her identity is being beautiful. But she doesn't know who she is.
And that is very challenging for
her
teenagers.
Her life's going to be miserable.
When all they've put out there in the world is that, oh, you're so pretty, or you're so good looking, or you're so handsome.
So moms and dads, here's another thing. If you're telling your kids they're cute all the time or they're smart, and that's all they have, but they're not getting any of the 3 A's on earned accomplishments or
merit
or effort, you're going to set them up for failure. They could be either a target or a bully if you're not careful. Please realize that when you compliment your children, when you give your children feedback, it's on two criteria only: something they accomplished and their effort. So they might have got a C, but if their effort was monumental, it's praiseworthy. You praise the effort. That's the first criteria. The accomplishment needs to be recognized if it's earned, not if it just happens. So if you praise your kid who gets an A on his calculus test but didn't study, you're praising something he didn't do. He just came that way. All right, so I throw that up. Okay, the bigger kids, we talked about that. As mentioned, bully environments typically happen because of an imbalance of power. Buck was now carrying the power. Researchers have found 3 general bully profiles based on motivation, tactics, responses to challenge, and the situation. We talked about them earlier, so we're only going to talk about the accidental bully. Again, the other two are narcissistic bully and psychopathic bully. By the way, if you run into a narcissistic bully or a psychopathic bully,
There's no hope, is there?
Get out.
Yeah.
To my knowledge,
go get a different job if that's your boss.
Got it, yeah. And usually you need to get a different job anyway, because the accidental bully, if the culture doesn't support that person changing, there's nothing you're going to do. And as soon as you walk out the door, that person will find someone else to target. And if you're not careful, if you don't understand these rules, you're going to move into the new position and you'll become the new target. It's not your fault per se, but it's your responsibility to stop being a target. But that's a different segment.
Buck was sliding into the profile of an accidental bully, and his fast rise to power blinded his ability to see the reality that he was losing his true identity to a false narrative. Finding himself hobnobbing with other middle managers and getting an occasional attaboy from a member of the C-suite played havoc with his psyche.
So he became lost in space. The space between his cognitive sense of reality and the overdrawn bank account on his values and morals. The cognitive distortions from the rapid rise left him oxygen deprived, and his behavior was out of character with the real Buck. Now, here's something that I've noticed. People who live this way are actually living outside their value structure. It's a cognitive distortion. But if they've done it so often, they've become norm to it, that their brain becomes, their cognitive becomes the apologist for the subconscious saboteur.
Sure, they're going to find ways to justify their bad behaviors.
So if you want to understand if you're doing this or you want to see if someone else is doing it, listen to their words. If there's a cognitive distortion with a constant justification or rationalization that the end justifies the means, you've got someone whose values have become normed to being compromised. So their conscience has been seared, and they're no longer operating off their value structure. There's no authenticity in that person. He knew better than to treat others so poorly. Notice the cognitive distortion here. But he was torn out of fear that he would not be accepted into the management corps, and his strong desire to connect with his old friends was being compromised. I got to fix that right there. Fix. He was seeking outside affirmation for a value that is internally located and harnessed, outside in versus inside out.
Right. Accidental bullies lack self-awareness and empathy. They typically overreact to pressure and lack emotional self-control. They lose sight of the humanity of others and frequently use aggression as a means to an end. Employee welfare is secondary to a task or a company goal, and they feel that their behavior should be excused or overlooked, as this is business, so don't take it personally. This type of bully is usually amenable to intervention and is often shocked when they learn the consequences of their behavior.
So 2 points: shocked, and they don't take it personally. One, don't take it personal is hogwash. It is personal, for crying out loud. When you treat someone like an object, you just removed their humanity.
Right.
It's very personal, and to tell someone don't take it personal, it's just business, means that you just objectified them, objectified yourself, loss of self-respect, and you're using something to hide behind, like the Nazis. It's identical. Don't think yourself any better than a Nazi would if you're killing the Jews because you're hiding behind this is just business. It's not just business. It's you. Okay, I'm going to go off on a soapbox. I really feel like I need a drug right now. This idea that we're saving the world from the coronavirus, the cure is going to cost us more lives.
Or the treatment.
The treatment is going to cost us more lives than the actual COVID. The supply chains have been interrupted. According to some researchers, it's going to kill over 200,000 more people because 125 million children are going on to starvations. Okay, now just think for a second. I'm not saying that what we're doing is wrong or right. I'm saying we're not looking at all the data. We're hiding behind a singular set of scientists who are saying that we need to shut down businesses. But what are you doing to the businesses? Why